set, start. All skulls on.
What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and today I am hosting the very first episode of the All Skulls On podcast. With me today are Favyn,
Boop, boop.
Late Night Gaming,
I got nothing special, it's me.
and the illustrious Raycevick.
You all suck.
Oh, starting the hate train quickly.
That's what I do. I'm just the hater in the house.
Hater in the house.
I'm pretty sure that's like all of us.
He's here for dramatic reasons. He's here to keep it spicy.
Yeah. Well, we're all here to
Watch,
do that.
he'll disagree with anything. Just have conflict.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ask him anything. He'll disagree.
Yeah, come at me with anything, and I'll find something wrong.
What's
with
your opinion? What's your opinion on gravity?
Gravity is okay. Here's the thing: it's extremely inconvenient because even when I don't want it to respond to my actions, it still does it anyways. It's very inconsiderate and also very inconvenient. Like, do you know how many dangerous things that have happened or horrible things that have happened to human beings because of gravity?
With you.
Yeah, see,
I disagree. I don't even believe in it.
Gentlemen, let us get back to the topic at hand. This is the All Skulls On podcast, and what we're about here is talking about video games and whatever, and just, having a ball.
And we've already
wanna talk
broken
about
that rule
politics.
within 2 minutes of the podcast.
Now, if you guys were to outline, Raycevick, what are your goals for this podcast? Like, let's just introduce ourselves and get things on the table.
Well, my personal goals with the podcast are for us to discuss whatever the subject. Mostly it's going to be gaming related because we're a bunch of fucking nerds. But, at the end of the day...
Well, you're a nerd.
Yeah, you're a nerd, bruh.
Okay.
Take a swing at me, bruh. I ain't a nerd.
Fine.
Well, you say nerd like it's not socially acceptable to be one still. It's almost like weird if you're not a nerd at this point. Like in
They go like,
nerdophobe?
what? Like, what? Yeah, like... I just had
like
this
you don't play video games, you fucking loser.
I just had this conversation yesterday. Like, how do people exist without video games in their spare time? Like, what else do they do?
I used to do puzzles. Puzzles used to be my thing.
Yeah, but now they have puzzle video games.
Yeah. It doesn't
video
replace the charm of just figuring out a puzzle, though. But anyways, back to you, Raycevick.
But yeah, no, I think my personal goal at least is for us to have, because we all have very different polarizing opinions. We all have very different backgrounds, to converge and just discuss something, a specific topic. Our goal, I don't think, is to come to an agreement. I think it's just to bring our stances and see if we can enlighten anybody along the way. And if not, well, oh well. Fuck it.
Sounds good. What about you, Favyn? What are your goals for this podcast?
Well, I really want to get to the bottom of voter fraud in American general elections. That's the big issue going around right now.
I knew he was going to be the one to bring the subject up.
Oh, so here I am just wanting to talk about video games and trying to check my Twitter to see if there's cool things about video games.
Are you trying to say that you don't think video game people should talk about politics?
Well,
I have the right to express my opinions on any platform that I want to express them, regardless of whether or not you actually cared about me in the first place.
Oh, the salt.
My political
The salt is real.
He started his YouTube channel.
I've infiltrated
he made friends with us all so he could
podcast.
get a voice on the internet
That's
and then do
absolutely
this
correct.
right now.
Pushing
I don't
your
mean
agenda.
to push this subject even further, but I'm thinking back to how, like, when that movie Team America came out and was basically poking fun at all these celebrities talking about these serious topics, they have no fucking clue on what the subject is. I feel like all those people just ignored that movie and then just took to Twitter, because that just seems to be where they've all relegated themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
anyways,
disclaimer, I actually don't want to talk about any of that shit. I don't.
It's a good thing
No,
you disclaimed that.
One
Don't do
iota
that.
of
We
a
know
fuck.
it's a bit. Stick to the bit. It's okay. We know
Stick
you're
to
joking.
the bit.
You
Yeah,
don't.
I know, but
you
the
don't
problem is that
break
there's a lot of
your
people that don't
character.
know.
back.
There's a lot of people that do
Come
not
back
know.
to Earth, Favyn. Come back to Earth.
Okay, I'm coming back. Okay, I'm here. Now what?
All right. Well, what are your goals for the podcast?
My goals for the podcast are to prove once and for all that Sprint ruined Halo. We're gonna talk about it. Okay.
At some point, probably.
At some
knowing-
point.
knowing
Sprint
this
ruined
show.
Halo. I don't know. Just talk. It's cool talking about video games. It's what I like to do. It's what I do in my spare time anyway.
Yeah,
you guys
I feel
seem
it.
cool. So, yeah, this is a good outlet. Getting 4 people who shit on video games to come together and shit on each other sounds like fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a ball. Now, what about you, Late Night? What are your goals for this podcast?
Honestly, I don't. This isn't like something that I've meditated over and like prepared. Like this
What
is where we will be in a year.
This guy, man. Like
It's
Don't you
just
have a
whatever.
steam room that you go to just like...
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
Breathe
if we're
in,
bringing up
breathe
my
out.
steam room, yeah. No, it's just like whatever. Like whatever the topic is, we'll talk about that, and then the next topic, and the next, and we'll just keep going from there.
He's a free spirit. And I think that's a cool thing. You know, people in the comment section, you guys can always suggest topics for us to tackle, and we'll do our best to tackle them. I will be the defensive lineman, and the rest of you guys can choose your football positions. But anyways,
Quarterback.
Well,
guy
the
at the
quarterback
front
doesn't tackle anyone.
That's about
That's
all I
right.
know.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Resident Evil 7. All right,
Why?
Because
Why?
I know you
That was
guys
a
wanted to
horrible
talk
segue.
about that.
Yeah, let's talk about Resident Evil 7.
You want to start it off, Late Night?
No.
What are
I
your
think
thoughts?
Hold on,
Favyn,
one sec.
I think Favyn
One
should
sec.
go first because he just like has this long list of things that he
He
needs to get
has
off his
this
chest.
massive hard-on for Resident Evil 7.
oh.
He just needs to
Just
let it out.
Get it out. Get it out of you.
Get it out. Get
First
it
of
out
all,
of your
just to segue back when you brought up Ackman that they can request ideas, we were also going to do a little Q&A bit for each episode. So if you wanted to bring that up as well.
Oh, and have the audience ask questions and...
Yeah, and we'll answer a few questions every episode.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. We can answer them
We've
as a
talked
squad.
about this.
Okay.
You're acting like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. It's like, bruh, we've been talking about that.
Okay,
How do you know
audience,
I wasn't high or drunk at that point?
audience members who are
that's a good
listening,
point.
leave questions in the comment section below, and we will answer at least a slight handful of them next time.
I don't know how big your hands are, but mine are a decent size, so I
Mine
can
are
pick
bigger
up a
than
few of
Trump's,
those.
that's for sure.
No small hands over here, just good old
Figured out
political
how to
jokes,
get
no
politics
political
into
jokes.
it. I figured out how to do it.
No jokes, no political jokes. This is already, by the way, guys, audience listening, this is actually the #1 podcast on the internet.
Oh
already.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow.
Oh my god, guys, we've already topped the charts.
We got there fast.
I just fart out, clouds of magic that get us onto the top of iTunes, man. I just
There we
can't
go.
help it.
We're
It's
there.
a real side effect.
we're putting this on
Nice.
iTunes?
Oh,
No,
well, I mean
I
that's
don't
what
know.
top podcasts do, right? I mean,
No, you
like,
didn't hear him. He said top podcast on the internet. Like as
Period.
a whole.
Yes.
Doesn't
Oh, the
matter the
yes.
platform.
okay, so like
Yes.
we rank like things like you got like lolcats.
I don't know what that
shitty
is.
music
See, I don't
videos,
know who
and
they
then-
are, but
yeah.
I know who these guys are.
Well, yeah,
So
exactly.
we're-
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're above them.
Yeah.
So, Resident Evil 7, Favyn. What
Well,
are your
I don't know what
thoughts?
you want me to. Well, you guys are busting my balls right here. You know I'm making a video about it. It's like I don't want to talk about all the things I was going to talk about in
Can
the
we
video.
say that it's super goddamn good and then use it to segue into something else?
It's super goddamn good, kind of like this other game.
Like Resident Evil 2, which is being remade.
Yay!
Oh,
that's
it
what
is.
everyone wants, right?
God,
Yeah.
we're so good at this
Like
already.
remember how Resident Evil 1 aged like milk out in the sun?
Mm-hmm.
Like bad voice acting, poor visuals, even for the time relatively poor, and then they made an incredible remake of it for the GameCube
That no one
blew-
bought.
That no one bought.
I
But
didn't
Which
even
is
know
why,
they did remake
which is why they made Resident Evil 4 the way it was, as opposed to
And
the normal. survival
So
horror.
now the thing is, though, the Resident Evil remake for the GameCube is widely considered one of like the best games ever made, just because not only was it like a remake, it was a full-blown just like reconstruction, almost every aspect of it. Dialogue, like voice acting, visual, like everything was just redone completely. And so basically they announced that Resident Evil 2, which many consider to be the best Resident Evil game of all time, that's going to be getting a similar treatment. But now the rumor mill is that they might be switching to first person for this remake, similar to Resident Evil 7.
Now, it's interesting to note how good Resident Evil 7 is doing at the moment. Like, I think one of you guys said, it's gotten to about 2.5 million copies sold or shipped on its first night.
Yeah.
Something
I think
like
they
that.
said it had the third best launch in the series history, considering
Wow.
how many Resident Evil games there's been. That's
Oh,
pretty
man.
good, especially for a game that's coming off of a disaster in Resident Evil 6 and also a disaster in, what is it, like the Umbrella Corps?
I wouldn't say like
whatever.
a disaster with this game, disaster. I would say just almost half a decade of disaster after disaster. Like,
well, the thing is,
I don't even know.
With
Yeah,
Resident Evil,
you go, Raycevick.
Yeah, but the thing about Resident Evil 6 as well is that it wasn't just, a failure from, like a fan response perspective. It was also, a disaster financially. They poured millions upon millions of dollars into that project. It was the employment team behind it was in the hundreds and hundreds of people behind it. And it clearly shows in the work that you see.
It's really sad reading up the development of Resident Evil 6 because so much goddamn effort went into that game, it'll make you sick.
But it was effort that was steered into the direction of, okay, how can we make this game appeal to X audience? Like, we're going to have
it was
this
like
campaign
X,
to be...
Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
X audience being literally every audience under the sun. Like, how do we make this appeal to everyone?
Straight up. Just like, literally, they're like, okay, well, let's just put 4 games into one. And yep, that's Resident Evil 6. That's what we're doing. And it's not that they didn't work hard.
No,
you could definitely see what they were trying to do, but the direction of that game was so ill-advised. Oh, it almost just completely killed the whole franchise for me.
Well, and it's also just the lack of focus and vision about it. Like, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, this is going to probably piss some diehards off, but I love Resident Evil 6. For all the fucking wrong reasons. I adored playing. I love that game in the same way you would love a movie like Troll 2. Like, here's the thing. Playing that game solo, I probably would have hated it, but I played it in co-op, and me and a friend, just drinking beers and playing that game, that is some of the most fun I've had in years.
Oh, I
playing
do too.
that
Like
game and
Leon
just laughing.
shooting the zombie president, but it's not like a joke. Like they're taking it so goddamn seriously.
Or
like,
it's like,
great.
Or like my favorite sequence of all was like that, or one of the favorite sequences is like, Leon, he's just driving this car, one zombie shows up, and then he just steers the wheel, and then the police car flips over like 15 fucking times. No joke. And then catches fire and explodes.
Spoilers, by the way, spoilers.
Oh, yes. Like, yes.
Spoilers on Resident Evil 6.
We need to disclaim.
Who cares?
Spoil. Yes. Disclaimer.
My favorite is when the bad guy, he just randomly turns into a T-Rex, and that sounds like a joke for people who haven't played the game, but he really does turn into a T-Rex.
He's not joking. Okay. It's there.
Not
it is
joking.
actually there.
I remember, I had Resident Evil 4 on the Wii. And on the Wii, you're basically cheating, kind of, because you have the Wiimote and the crosshair is on the screen and you can point it, so it's way easier to aim. Yeah. I beat that game like 4, 5, 6 times. I loved it so much. And then I remember playing Resident Evil 5 for the first time. Played Resident Evil 5, and then like I got like 3/4 of the way through the game, and then it was just like, this kind of really sucks compared to Resident Evil 4.
Everyone's Resident Evil 5 experience. That's not just you.
I didn't even hate 5. I thought it was, as a co-op game to play with a buddy, it wasn't bad.
It was good.
It was a bad direction.
Yeah, good to play with a buddy, but
the direction
it was just so boring.
Well, here's the thing. It's like I agree, because here's the thing. That was the first Resident Evil game I ever played, and again, I played in co-op and I loved it. But again, for the same reason that I did with Resident Evil 6, not quite as full retard, but relatively close. I mean, like the end of the game is like Chris Redfield punching a boulder to get to the boss fight, and then he gets exploded by 2 bazooka RPGs. Spoiler alert: you really don't care. But like the thing about
spoiler is that you don't care about the ending.
Yeah, yes,
not
that
that happened in the ending.
Like the thing about, but like that game, all the additions, quote unquote, that they made, they were not for the benefit of the experience. It was not like, oh, hey, we were missing these. Oh, yeah, the thing that we were missing in our vision for Resident Evil 4, co-op and cover-based shooting. We planned those to be in Resident Evil 4 at the beginning, but we just didn't have the time to implement it. This is not at all a response to common trends going on in the game design space whatsoever. The Resident Evil 5, it's just a case of, I think the thing you can tell with that game is that was when it tried to take itself seriously. Because like Resident Evil 4, it's a total joke, but it is very self-aware. Like, you have traps that like perfectly capture people into like stone walls that then flip and turn around like an old James Bond villain. There's like a giant stone mech that chases you and like all this crazy shit. And then like a 10-year-old Napoleon kid who wants to take over the world. Like,
well, hang on. I gotta correct you. This is something that I learned. A mech is something that somebody pilots, and it is humanoid shaped.
Okay,
if it is a giant robot, it's a giant robot.
Okay, so it's actually just a robot made out of stone in this castle.
There we go.
Forgive me.
Thank you so much for that late night.
Yeah, that's
just
something
thanks.
I found out the
Thanks
other
for the
day. I was like,
insight.
oh, wow, everyone uses mech incorrectly.
That's a pretty good point, though. Like I think Resident Evil 4 had a pretty good storyline. Like, it wasn't anything super spectacular, but it really worked with the gameplay and everything and
Yeah.
those sort of horrifying
Do you
elements.
mean a
And
good storyline as in, like, this makes sense, or good as in it knows it's ridiculous?
It
and
knows
nothing
it's
is
ridiculous.
serious?
Like,
good in
like
the sense that it's enjoyable.
I'm
like,
a rookie
like
cop,
when
and now
you-
I'm the
that's
president's
okay.
right-hand man.
Yeah,
Protect
yeah,
his
it's like
daughter.
no. One of the parts I think of is you open the cabinet. It's like a closet dresser, and Luis Serra falls down on the ground.
Or
And,
Luis, I can't believe I forgot about that.
And Luis is like, I got one very important question for you. You got a smoke?
Oh, I mean, here's
And Leon's
like
just
another.
like, I got gum.
Well, like another way to summarize it, it's just like the store vendor. The store vendor himself, like, kind of
Yeah.
encapsulates everything that Resident Evil 4 is about. Every time you go to visit that guy, it's, what are you buying? I am
What
on the
are you
floor
buying?
fucking laughing.
It's genius, though.
It is.
They need
It
to bring
is.
that guy back.
Dude,
Well, have you also
there's...
read some of the things, like the little, like what I love about survival horror games is when you go up to a thing and you press like A or X or whatever you're playing, and it'll give your character's thoughts on stuff, like within the situation where you'll be being chased by these Spanish zombie people and you'll accidentally hit A or whatever near a bookcase and it'll be like, nothing very interesting here. And it's like just within the content. Like if it wasn't for all the, if it wasn't for all the Spanish
love that
zombies,
first guy
I'd
you
probably
kill.
take a look.
Yeah.
The first guy you kill, you look at him, and it's like, he's not a zombie. It's like, thanks, Resident.
Yeah. But why don't we talk about perspective in Resident Evil games? I mean, what do you guys prefer? I've only played really Resident Evil 4 and 5, and I've seen Resident Evil 7 gameplay, so I can't really speak on the first person sort of horror game, but I also got into Dead Space 1 and 2. So in my eyes, like this sort of survival horror game, it's just really awesome third person. I mean, what do you guys think of it being first person?
Well, I can't necessarily speak to the first, but to root this back to what Late Night was talking about with the Resident Evil 2 remake, the thing about Resident Evil is that it already has done a perspective shift in the past with the old school Resident Evil games going to Resident Evil 4. That was already a dramatic shift. And it's once again having to do this again after running that whole course bone dry after they couldn't seem to figure out what to do with it after Resident Evil 4. The thing about Resident Evil 2 is that if they're going to make if they're already made the game Resident Evil 2 and it goes into first person, then that first person should only be like a bonus. That should be like an option in the menu somewhere or like an unlockable after beating the game at a certain rank or something like that. It should not be something it shouldn't be like a main selling point. If that's
Well, that's
the
gonna
case.
that's gonna be so tough to do though, because
Yeah.
when you're in first person, it requires so much more detail. You know, when you were working with the fixed camera angles of the old Resident Evils, you could kind of cut corners and stuff. So if you wanted
lots
to
of
make
corners.
first person, even just like an optional mode, you would have to still do so much work to that game to make
Yeah.
it function.
And then
in
how would the
first person.
shooting work? Because with
That-
Resident
that's-
Evils, it
I-
was
I
always
don't-
just like you press the square button and your guy automatically
Yeah.
shoots the nearest. There was no aiming.
You could aim up and down a little bit, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, come on. Come on. Like, that's going to be like, oh, no, it's fine then. First person will work well.
Yeah, no, like the first person perspective, the thing typically when a game is first person, what it focuses on is direct. Until more recent stuff like Doom and Titanfall, it's been focusing more on just you typically go to a game in first person because you want a grander, more up close and personal or visceral style of gameplay.
Or cinematic.
Or sitting.
Fucking
God.
Christ.
The thing about, and from my understanding of Resident Evil, like Resident Evil, it was a top-down game to give that, and then with Resident Evil 4, that's what they did. In Resident Evil 4, they made, instead of the big shit your pants scary moments, instead of those being running away from people or certain set pieces, they made those into the combat system with this
And they did a good job.
over-the-shoulder camera
Oh, yeah.
perspective. And they did a really good job of it.
Some people also forget that one of the directors for the original Resident Evil game said, like, oh, the reason the gameplay fucking sucked and we never really improved it until 4 is because, I mean, it made it very difficult to take down even a single zombie. And that's scary when even you're so, like, unable to control your own body, that like a single zombie is a big threat. Like it becomes really scary because you have so little control over what's going on.
It's really funny you point that out, because it's almost like, oh my god, the controls, Jesus Christ, are so scary. The control scheme is the scariest part.
You open the manual, your eyes go big, and you're just reading in horror as you see like,
it's like enemies, it's like zombie, crawler,
you just
controller.
shudder. I will say, though, from an outsider's perspective, you know, when I was really, really into Resident Evil 4, I looked up, footage of the other Resident Evil games at the time, gameplay and stuff, and I was watching them, and I was like, that fixed camera position is, like, really weird. Like, from an outsider's perspective, you know, looking at those games, having never played them, like, it looks like it would be hard as balls to play.
The younger generation would probably also find it almost, like, repelling. Like, they'd be like, ugh.
Well, here's the thing, and this is the difference. Resident Evil 7 switched to the first person because that's kind of the trend right now. That's kind of the direction horror games are going. But when Resident Evil 4 switched to third person, that wasn't the trend. The trend was the fixed camera angles. You had Clock Tower, you had Alone in the Dark. All of those were using kind of that detached camera angle system. When Resident Evil 4 changed, it changed to be different. It changed and it set itself apart from the other games, which is why I feel like maybe it was a little more forgiving at its time, because people were like, oh, well, I've never seen this before. It's something new. It's not just trying to be something else.
Well, I
appreciate it.
Another aspect to that as well is I'm wondering what the Western influence is on Resident Evil 7, because not only is it penned by a Western writer this time, which I think it was a first for the series. I think it was the first game written by someone from the West. The other thing too is the culture in gaming as well, because another thing too is that Resident Evil 4, because a lot of games back then, specifically the Japanese games, they were not using the analog stick. I mean, I think it was one of the developers on Metal Gear Solid 4 and Halo 4, he was talking about how when they first put Metal Gear Solid 4 at TGS, at Tokyo Game Show, that a lot of users there had never played a third-person shooter in their life, because the Japanese, they did not have that gaming market from the West. So they go to play Metal Gear Solid 4, and they go, what the fuck is this? Why am I having to suddenly aim with this goddamn, this left thumbstick? This is with the right thumbstick. It's so bizarre. And the case is, too, with Resident Evil 4, is that Resident Evil 4, it was using not only the aiming perspective, but also the widescreen format perspective as well. Like that was a game that came out right around the time that widescreen TVs were becoming a little more commonplace, which is why it used its sort of letterbox style format, where you have a wide field of view, but you can't see very much outside of that. It's still restrictive. So it still kept everything from the original Evil's true, the restrictive perspective that you don't have all of your surroundings and stuff like that, but in a way that works. Whereas Resident Evil 7, as you say, it goes into first person, and not really in any, from my understanding, in any particular way that sticks with that. It's because other horror games are doing it currently.
I will say this,
bringing
though,
it in a way that works, though.
Surprisingly, and Late Night, you beat the game too, but we won't discuss spoilers, but Resident Evil 7 is surprisingly a Resident Evil game.
I think it's more Resident Evil than the series has been since, honestly, 3.
Yeah, the thing is it goes into the first person, but it's incredible how well it translates the Resident Evil formula into it. It's unbelievable.
I could imagine some kind of really detailed mod that puts it into a fixed camera, but it would probably feel right at home. Like, just the structure of the game as a whole. Like, it really is just a Resident Evil game, but you're seeing through your own eyes now. And that's it. Like, that's the only difference.
So, you guys that have played it, have you played it as well, Raycevick?
No, not yet.
Okay, good. I'm not
doing?
the only loser in this chat. But
fucking play it.
You and Favyn, would you guys say that Resident Evil 7, with some kind of tweaking, could not only work first person as it is now, but also in third person and sort of with the fixed camera angle?
Absolutely.
Like, you think it could work in
some of
both
the
of those
experience
perspectives?
would be taken away just because it's very clearly designed around like not being able to see around your peripherals. But like
right.
The fixed camera could definitely work if it was done like if they took a lot of time to make sure it's perfect. I could see it working.
Yeah, if they really wanted to.
The thing is, and I'm just basically going to say a few things I'm going to say in my video too, so you're going to have some overlap. But the thing about Resident Evil 7 is leading up to it, it looks like they're doing the exact same thing they did with 5 and 6, which is being iterative of everything else out there. And like you see what they did with the demo, and you think, oh, they're trying to be like Silent Hills, and you see the perspective
were
shift.
Super trying to be PT with that demo.
Yeah, and you see that, and you think, oh, they're trying to be like Outlast and Amnesia, and it's going to be like those horror games. But really, they didn't do that. This game is actually really genuine and very confident in what it's trying to be.
It feels inspired as opposed to just copying.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's really just, despite the shift, the game and the structure of the game is very much Resident Evil. And the heart of the game is very much Resident Evil. And I think that was surprising. I was expecting a lot more, running away and trying to hide in cupboards. Initially, that's what I thought we were going to get, but they didn't. They did a pretty cool thing.
It's very interesting. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing I'm curious about is, do you think it could... Here's the thing. I'm guessing, from my understanding of games, that it would be easier to port this game, Resident Evil 7, into a fixed camera or third person than it would be to port Resident Evil 2 into first person or third person camera, for the reasons we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, because of the detail and
Yeah.
stuff. Resident Evil 7 is a very detailed game, for sure.
Sounds like you guys are giving it quite the recommendation. I should definitely pick that up. From all I've been hearing.
I was going to suggest, something interesting to touch on what Raycevick said about like Western game design and how much influence it might have. Something else we could probably bring up is another Capcom horror title that was beforehand mostly Japanese made, that recently got super heavy Western elements thrown in, but this time it was for the significant worse, which is Dead Rising 4.
Oh, man.
Which, that game is so bad. It is so
it?
bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, what's funny is it's so bad because almost every aspect of its like Japanese elements, where it's like some very clunky, quirky gameplay elements that are very clearly made by Japanese developers, being replaced with Western, like smooth, streamlined elements that just like strip away all of its soul, and it's just like this heartless game with no ass.
Well, I feel like
no ass.
With no ass. I thought I wasn't the only one that heard that.
But like the
heartless
thing,
game with no ass.
Oh, my God.
Not
that flat
even
ass
ass.
game, Dead Rising 4.
that's the rating scale we're going to use, for these games.
I would definitely,
Dead
1
Rising
to flat
4,
ass.
Yeah, it's just flat.
All right,
out of
guys.
ass.
So to wrap this podcast up, why don't we just quickly talk about the types of games that each of us are most attracted to, like the ones that really captivate us strongest. And I'll just start off because I'm hosting this.
I'm the Eggman. I'm in charge of this.
Yeah, that's right.
Plebeians.
That's right. Bow down. So the types of games that have always really captivated me, there's basically two types. One of them is games that have like a really good multiplayer, like ones that you can really spend a lot of time playing if you want to play competitively or just to have fun. Halo. To an extent, yeah, Titanfall, even Call of Duty sometimes. Like Call of Duty's been kind of like a fun game for me to play. Haven't been digging the new ones, but good solid multiplayer games with a lot of depth in the multiplayer. And then the second type of game that I like is it's always funny how this works out. It's like RPGs with really, really good stories that just like can go on for a super long amount of time. Like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Tales of Symphonia. Nobody's gonna fucking know what that game is, but it's.
I know what that game is.
Someone's
Good.
gonna know it in the comments.
Good.
They're probably
Thank
gonna
you,
brag about
Favyn.
it. They're probably gonna say like, "Hey, Axeman, love this comment because I know what this game is."
Well, some people out there do. So a game like that, and Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and Dragon Age Origins, like those games that you can really invest a lot of time into, and you make decisions, and those types of RPG stories are that's something that really captivates me. So why don't we move on to Late Night? Why don't you tell us?
What do I like in games?
What type of game captivates you the most? Like what's an element or something from a video game that just like makes you really, really enjoy the experience?
Well, for one thing, first person. I like first person, but not because like, oh, it's like Call of Duty. Oh, I like it. I was trained to like this. Just because it's first person. It's like the most immersive a video game can be if done well enough. So I like first-person stuff a lot, like not shooters, like literally anything that's in the first person, but also just like sometimes I really like games that take a long time to play, like RTSs or something. Just like, I don't know, it's hard to say. I like good games.
Long single-player games?
Well, here's the thing. A single-player game can outstay its welcome, and it can actually, I think, long single-player games can sometimes be a downside to the game. Like, I'm thinking of Outlast, where it's like, man, that game lasted way too fucking long. But I don't know. It's just like it's a very, very broad question what you're asking. I just like good games.
You just like good games, clean and simple. What about you, Favyn?
I'm pretty similar to Late Night there. I just like good games. The range of games I like is very broad. I like shooters. I like adventure games. I love RPGs, mostly Western, also some Japanese RPGs. I like horror games. I'm a huge horror game fan. Basically any horror game that comes out I'm going to check out in some capacity. Just really anything good. I'm looking for things that are different, that try to break the mold and be unique in the market. And speaking of horror games, just real quick, because we talked about Resident Evil 7 and its Western influence, that game is surprisingly also very, has a lot of Japanese horror elements as well, and it blends those two together really well. I think that's one of the best horror games in the past few years, definitely, at least.
Also, on a side note, this is sponsored by Capcom.
Sponsored by Capcom.
Well, I can't believe we just forgot to mention that.
Oh, sorry.
Well, then again, I mean, like, we did talk a lot of trash about Dead Rising 4, so who
good
knows?
point.
But
Actually, good point.
I think Capcom, they just didn't pay us enough. Like,
No.
They
They paid us because they wanted us to talk trash about Dead Rising 4 so that people are like, oh, I guess the real good zombie game is Resident Evil 7. So they can snowball. You know, it's the snowball effect. That's what they're going for.
They're going to take the Peter Molyneux approach. The last game was shit. Don't trust me. This next one, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So Favyn likes horror games and
y'all should look
games
up
that break the
Cat's
mold.
video.
You want me to break the mold? Or
Well,
no, you want him
yeah.
to
So
break the mold?
I think you'll have a more specific answer, Raycevick, right? Your videos always outline, the very specific, finer details of things that you enjoy and dislike. So
I'll try to find something that's worthy of the boom that I do at the end of all the videos.
Boom.
The thing that I think about when I think about games what comes to mind when I think of games that really stick with me are ones that really get you going, not just emotionally, but physically. And what I mean by that is games that, like the way that I can play a game of Rainbow Six Siege, and if the intention is really crazy, my heart gets going, my hands are shaking. My mind is entirely in that situation. I'm not thinking about taxes. I'm not thinking about laundry or any of that boring shit. I'm just thinking about, I've got to do this and this and this and that to get the situation done. And that can be achieved in any number of ways. That can be achieved in a multiplayer game like Halo or Rainbow Six. It can be achieved in a story-heavy game like Dragon Age or The Witcher. It can be achieved in really tight, really small packages like Spec Ops The Line or the Stanley Parable. Wii Sports, yes.
Mario Tennis, bro. You
get
four
enough
playing
people,
Mario Tennis.
get enough people and enough alcohol, and you can fucking convince any Nintendo game to be like a rushing experience. I have thrown my controller over Mario Party.
That's incredible.
It's part of why I still consider the Wii to be one of my favorite consoles of all time. I don't give a shit if it was like kind of terrible on paper in almost every aspect. All those like party games with like the Wii controllers, it was fun. It was a lot of fun playing with people.
I would not disagree with that.
But that's what comes to mind to me is a game that gets you going emotionally and physically, mainly because that is something that I personally don't really experience too often in any other medium, but on a frequent basis I do in video games.
Yeah,
I think that's
with video
why I play
games.
them.
And to quickly go off of that, that happens a lot with me in multiplayer games too. Like I used to be pretty big into League of Legends, and I used to be like really competitive at that. I was Diamond 4, if anyone here watching knows what League of Legends is or about it.
Mr. Diamond's over here.
Diamond 4 is pretty high, and I would just like
You're going to get somebody down.
I would play the shitty champions, like the champions that everyone would like think I was trolling and playing, and I would just like kick ass, and I would just feel this rush. Like I'm playing Urgot, this guy that has a 43% win ratio, and I'm playing him in the super high rank, and I'm kicking ass with him. And so just go off that sort of adrenaline rush. But anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. This was the All Skulls On podcast. Now, make sure you leave your comments, questions, thoughts in the comments section below. Make sure you subscribe to the Act Man, and these other guys. I mean, yeah, you can subscribe to them if you want.
I could
Don't
always. Don't do it to Favyn in particular.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Nah,
I have the least here. I'm the one that needs it the most. Okay.
Subscribe to Fabian, not because he's desperate, but their channels will be listed in the description and in the pinned comment at the top. So check them out, give them a sub, and enjoy. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. That's all we got for today. This is the Act Raycevick Favyn Gaming of Late signing out.
We'll see you later.
Man, what an episode.